Hi, a very good day to Dr. Huda and my fellow friends. The theme that we choose for our project is Traveler Experience. But first, let me introduce our group members. They are Pojingbang, Priya, and Lohini. The company that we choose to research is Airbnb, as it is growing rapidly in the travel market. Therefore, we are keen to analyze and research the growth and trend of Airbnb in the world by analyzing the dataset. For our objective, to explore the Airbnb listing data in two famous cities in New York, Brooklyn and Manhattan, to identify the main factors driving high rating and thus high ratings influence the price of the listing, to conduct hypothesis tests to determine whether the prices of apartment listing in Brooklyn Airbnb differs or not from the apartments in Manhattan Airbnb listing, predicting the highest revenue generating city at the United States.
The dataset that we have used for this project is from InsideAirbnb.com, which is an anti-Airbnb lobby group that scraped Airbnb listings, reviews, and calendar data for multiple cities around the world. And the data we have used in our project was scrapped in August 2019, and it contained information on all New York Airbnb listings that were live on that site in that month. A GeoJSON file of New York City borough was also used in this project for the mapping purposes. Initially, our data was huge. We had nearly 48,000 data. In order to study this project, we have collected the sample from these 48,000 data via stratified sampling, where we have segmented all the New York City Airbnb listings into different neighborhood groups. Then we obtain the sample by doing the simple random sampling in Excel. In our case, we have chosen to study mainly on Brooklyn and Manhattan cities since they have the most number of listings in New York City. We have done the random sampling of 500 data from these two neighborhood groups. To add on, before we did the random sampling, we have done the data cleaning by using the deletion method, where we deleted all the listings with incomplete data and conduct the analysis only in complete cases. Now, let's move on and get started with our objectives. Our objective number 1 is to explore the Airbnb listings data in two famous cities in New York, which are Brooklyn and Manhattan. Here, in both cases, we have used the median to describe the pricing statistically instead of mean, because we had some extreme values like $10,000, so we thought it is a good idea to use median instead of mean. Next, let's look into Manhattan. This is the Manhattan map. Area-wise, Manhattan looks smaller than Brooklyn, but then the price of listings in Manhattan are generally higher than Brooklyn, if you can see. Could be because the land area in Manhattan is smaller and it is densely populated, which will lead to limited spaces available to the people, and so the listing prices are more expensive in comparison to Brooklyn. As you can see, the highest median price in Manhattan is £395, whereas the lowest median price would be $61 in Inwood. These should also be in dollars. Now, let's look into the property types that are listed in Brooklyn and Manhattan Airbnb. The most common ones are the apartment, which has around 35.6% in Brooklyn with median price of $100, and in Manhattan is 44.6% with median price of $131. The orange one represents Brooklyn and the pink ones represent Manhattan. And secondly, we can see townhouse with the next percentage, where we have around 3.6% of townhouse in Brooklyn with the median price of $99.5. And for Manhattan, we have around 0.8% with the median price of $190. And for house type, we have in Brooklyn for 4.8% for median price of $85. And the rest of it we have less than 1% in Brooklyn and Manhattan. Next, we will look into the room types that are listed in Brooklyn Airbnb. From the analysis, we can see that there are only 3 types of room listed in both cities, which are entire home or apartment, the ones in red, private rooms, the ones in orange, shared room, the ones in green. So in Brooklyn, we have around 54% of entire home or apartment is listed with the median price of $139. And we have around 43.6% of private room listed with median price of $65. And we also have 2.4% of shared room in Brooklyn with median price of $35. Next, we will look into the same thing for Manhattan. This is the pie chart for Manhattan, where we have around 58.4% of entire home or apartment listed in Manhattan with median price of $177. And we have 40% of private room listed in Manhattan with $88 and shared room for 1.6% with $82. Lastly, let's look into the reviews of the Airbnb listings in Brooklyn and Manhattan. As you can see here in this chart, the first column will be for Brooklyn and the second one is for Manhattan. So the orange ones are average review score ratings and the pink ones are the average review score accuracy. So for Brooklyn, we have 95.13 of average review score rating. And for Brooklyn, we have 9.77 average review score accuracy. Whereas for Manhattan, we have 92.37 average review scores rating. And also for Manhattan, we have average review score accuracy of 9.45. We can see that in all these two measures, average review score rating and average review score accuracy, Brooklyn has slightly upper hand in comparison to Manhattan. Now, let's summarize our first objective. The highest median price of Airbnb listing in Brooklyn is $400, whereas in Manhattan is $395. In contrast, the lowest median price of Airbnb listing in Brooklyn is $23, whereas in Manhattan is $61. We also watched that the most listed property type in both Brooklyn and Manhattan is apartments with 35.6% and 44.6% respectively. And the most common room type listed in Airbnb in Brooklyn and Manhattan is the entire home or apartment, which stands 54% in Brooklyn and 58.4% in Manhattan. And lastly, in general, Brooklyn Airbnb listings has slightly better review score rating and score accuracy in comparison to Manhattan.
The second objective is to identify the main factors driving high ratings and thus the high ratings influence the price on the listings. To test the relationship of the factors and high ratings, we have done the regression test on SPSS by having review scores rating as the dependent variable and scores on accuracy, cleanliness, check-in, communication, location and value as the independent variables. Out of these 6 independent variables, we found that there are 4 statistically significant variables, whereas 2, which are the review scores on check-in and communication, does not have a significant effect on the dependent variable, as the values are greater than the p-value 0.05. Based on the 4 significant variables, we have done a chart on the coefficient values. Here, we can see that when the scores for cleanliness increases by 1, the review scores increases by 2.2, followed by when the score for location increases by 1, the review scores increases by 0.81. And here we could see the highest influencer is the value whereby as the score for value increases by 1, the review score increases by 3.35. And finally, when the scores for accuracy increases by 1, the review scores increases by 2.24. So, we were wondering what can be done with those ratings. Are those ratings actually influencing the price of the listings? We did a regression test as well, and now we did it with 7 independent variables where we have added the review scores rating as an independent variable and kept price as the dependent variable. Once the regression test was done, to our surprise, the answer was no. High ratings does not influence the price. Review scores rating was not statistically significant with the price. As you could see, the p-value is 0.613, which is way larger than the 0.05 p-value. The only variable that was significant to the price here was location.
Our objective 3 is to conduct hypothesis tests to determine whether the prices of apartment listings in Brooklyn Airbnb differs or not from the apartments in Manhattan Airbnb listings. So to begin with, we have formulated the hypothesis null and alternative as below. And this is a two-tailed test, so if the p-value is lesser than alpha, therefore we will reject H0, otherwise we will accept the H0. And this will be a t-test since the population standard deviation is unknown. So here is our hypothesis statement. Our H0 says mu b equals to mu m, where our alternative hypothesis says mu b not equals to mu m. Here, mu b is sample mean of Brooklyn and mu m is sample mean of Manhattan. And we have chose to use alpha equals to 0.05. Here are the tables. So we have conducted hypothesis tests for 2 sample means using independent samples in Excel, and we have done a f-test to check whether or not these two sets of data, which is the prices of apartment in Brooklyn and Manhattan, has similar variance or not. And from the F table you can see that they don't have equal variance, and therefore we have chosen to do t-test 2 sample assuming unequal variances to obtain the second table as shown. And from the second table, which is the t-test table, you can see the highlighted p-value, which is 3.42 to the power of negative 10 to the power of negative 8, which is way smaller than 0.05 our alpha. Therefore, we will reject the H0. So based on our hypothesis test, the conclusion is, based on the sample data, there is sufficient evidence at the alpha equals to 0.05 level of significance to conclude that the prices of apartment listings in Brooklyn Airbnb differs from the ones in Manhattan Airbnb.
Next, the fourth objective, which is the prediction. We are here to predict the highest revenue generating city in the United States. So, before we start the prediction, a regression test was conducted to see if the model is suitable. From the ANOVA table, we came to know that the significant value is lesser than 0.05. So, the current model can be used for prediction. And from the model summary, we can see that the model has a high R square, which is 70%. That answers our question. We are good to go. From the prediction, it is seen that the unstandardized mean for Brooklyn was $116.20, while for Manhattan it was $170.29. This implies that Manhattan will be generating a higher revenue compared to Brooklyn in Airbnb.
This is our conclusion. The Airbnb listing data in Brooklyn and Manhattan City had been demonstrated graphically. The main factor in driving high rating score is the location of the listing, how accurately it has been stated, cleanliness of the accommodation, and finally the value for money, However, the high rating of listing at Manhattan and Brooklyn does not influence the price of the listing significantly. There is sufficient evidence at the alpha equal to 0.05 level of significance to conclude that the prices of apartment listing in Brooklyn Airbnb differs from the one in Manhattan Airbnb. The predicted value was higher for Manhattan.